This is crazy. This is actually nuts, dude. What the
I just spent $1,400 joining a private jet club for people who want to look rich when they're actually broke. They promise unlimited private jet flights, the entire plane to yourself, no TSA, and all for one flat fee. So for the last 6 months, I've rearranged my life around notifications for flights that may or may not even exist, from a company that might just be a massive scam. Look, I might be a masochist. I keep throwing all of my money into these things I'm pretty sure are scams, from getting a free vacation from timeshare scammers to traveling across the Pacific to illegally gamble in Japan to full-on cult infiltrations. I've been through a lot, and for some reason, I just keep coming back for more. So when I heard about a company offering free, unlimited private jet flights, my scammy senses started tingling. But I mean, if this is real, who wouldn't want to bathe in the beautiful vanity of taking a private jet to get my groceries instead of my car? I could be just like Taylor Swift. And on top of that, I love traveling and trying new experiences, so having unlimited access to flights that actually have more than a centimeter of legroom seems like a perfect fit for me. And I've never flown private before. Hell, I've never even flown first class. I'm usually a basic economy back of the plane getting kicked by a toddler kind of guy. I imagine private jets to be like those Emirate flights. You know, beds, free food, indentured servants from Dubai, maybe even a jacuzzi.
Can you believe that? Can you believe we don't have a jacuzzi?
And lucky for me, Vaunt promises that I too can live that lifestyle. Their website advertises that they use repositioning flights that would have otherwise been empty to bring us lowly plebeians a glimpse of luxury. I'm talking unlimited flights that are truly private for people who want an elevated experience and have a true sense of adventure.
They talking about me.
The only downside being that these flights are only one way, so I'll have to find my own way home, but that's what we call an FP, a future problem. And surely I have nothing to worry about. I mean, they're credible. Their website is full of testimonials from paying customers, like this one from Cassie, who's an entrepreneur and a personal trainer.
Vaunt is a company where you pay once for the year to fly unlimited empty leg flights on a private jet. You get the entire jet to yourself. They have a concierge team and an easy app for flight access. I literally purchased my membership on Thursday and was on my first flight on that Saturday in the same week.
Thanks, Cassie, entrepreneur, personal trainer, and social media marketing specialist, for that unbiased review. But I'm sure it's all just a coincidence, and she really did take the private jet and is a paying customer. So I went to the App Store and saw that they have a beautiful 2.1 stars. So after reading a few more reviews from satisfied customers, I decided it was legit enough for me and went to sign up. And yeah, maybe it only has 2.1 stars on Google, but I've had a bank with a worse rating, so I wasn't too worried about it. So after downloading the app, I signed up, or I guess more accurately, tried to sign up. Filling out my profile was simple enough outside of the app crashing several times during that process, which in hindsight probably should have been foreshadowing for the insufferable rage bait that I would have to endure to be able to get onto a flight. And after I filled out my profile, I added every airport within like a 4-hour drive to my list of preferred airports. I then excitedly scrolled through the list of all of the flights available, only to notice that there were none in my area. Zero. Not only that, I couldn't see any upcoming flights anywhere, which honestly bummed me out a little bit, but I wasn't too discouraged yet because I didn't end up paying anything yet. So maybe they block the upcoming flights for paying members. After all, on my profile, it says I'm a non-member, as you can see here. So before I spent the $2,000 I was expecting this to cost, I called them. And for reference, this was on. To my surprise, not only was getting on the phone with a real person almost immediate, the guy on the phone was super cool. I don't remember his name, but I kept getting texts afterwards from this guy called Tom, so we're just gonna go with that. And Tom confirmed to me that after I officially signed up and paid the big buccarinos, I'd be able to see all of the flights in my area and be notified of all the flights coming up. He also told me that his job is to usually upsell people, but I didn't have to worry about any of that because, quote, there are like 6 people in the Portland area who have ever signed up to Vaunt. So priority boarding would never be an issue for me like it would be in the South or in a bigger market somewhere in the East. And that all sounded great to me. It essentially means that I'll have first dibs on all and any PJs leaving from Portland. It sounds like a no-brainer, especially because he told me this was the last week I could lock in the low price of $1,400 before they raised their prices to the $3,000 that they currently are. I mean, was this a classic limited time offer closing technique in order to get me to buy? I don't know, maybe. Did I buy it? Hell yeah, I bought it. So after I told this random man all of my credit card information over a recorded line, I had no choice but to simply wait until I was notified that a private jet was available in my area. About a month later, on January 5th, it finally happened. I was in an early morning meeting when I got a phone notification that there was a flight leaving from Seattle the very next day. And the first thing that I noticed is that there was only about 45 minutes from the time of notification until I had to finalize myself on the wait list. Which is no big deal. I mean, Tom prepared me for this. He let me know that when the notifications are sent out, that's when the rat race begins. The first person to lock in their spot is usually the person to actually take the flight. So I clicked the notification immediately, tried to log in, and error reaching Vaunt services. I check my connection and try again, and the same thing happens. See, to log into the app, you need to enter verification codes that the app sends you. Problem is, I wasn't getting any verification codes. Well, until a few minutes after I try to sign in, that is. The third time I go through the cycle of trying to open the app and getting a verification code is when it finally works, only for me to realize that the flight that I've been desperately trying to log in to see doesn't exist. And I don't mean that in a way of like somebody logged it in before me. Like literally, it doesn't exist. It's nowhere to be found. It's not on the app. Not listed in upcoming flights, not listed in past flights, nowhere. But maybe I was too slow. And maybe because it's processing, they remove it because somebody already signed up for the flight. After all, I did have a bunch of technical issues, and it's not like I'm faker. My fingers aren't that fast. So fast forward 20 days, January 25th, I get my second chance to fly private. I get a new notification, and this time I'm ready. Unbeknownst to me, the app wasn't ready. And thus began my saga of trying and failing over and over again to get the stupid, poorly designed, expensive app to... I try and I fail to log into 6 flights over the next month. On average, opening the app took me 30 minutes, 6 full login cycles. I'm talking verification codes that never get sent, some that double send. Oops, the app's crashed again. Oh no, Vaunt servers are down. Ooh, oopty the app doesn't work. And when I call into customer support to ask them about the flight that their app notified me of, they tell me that it never even existed, that these flights are just not real. Sorry about that, but the process of actually getting a flight was horrible. It was horrible. And I really want to emphasize that I'm used to this. I put myself through 4-hour timeshare presentations to get free stuff. I sit on customer support lines, often for fun, just to torture myself a little bit. I expected friction coming in. The thing I didn't expect is just how demanding these wait lists would apparently be, despite the fact that I wasn't really competing with anyone for the spot most of the time. I would get pinged at random times of the morning, usually with less than an hour of a window before the waitlist closed, which is crazy because opening the app took the majority of that time. So if I wasn't looking directly at my phone, the second I got a notification, there was pretty much no shot of me actually signing up. This was especially difficult because the majority of time I would receive a Vaunt notification, I'd be in a meeting at work. So I couldn't really just stop everything I was doing to open the notification and try to log in, Well, that was the case until February came around, and the best possible thing that could have happened to me in regards to me getting on one of these private jets happened. The company I worked for was sold and decided to pivot into AI slop, so I was laid off, which obviously meant I could spend my mornings refreshing the waitlist over and over again until I finally secured my spot on a private jet. There was nothing in my way anymore. Nothing could stop me. At least that's what I thought until February 5th, 2026, the day that started like any other day of me waking up, checking my notifications and hoping Vaunt would be there. And lucky for me, it actually was. So I clicked the notification and tried to log in on time to secure my spot. But like most mornings, I tried and I failed to log in on time. But at 2:30 p.m., I get a second notification and I start the cycle again of trying to log in, requesting code after code, watching them come in, expire, not arrive on time, arrive late. App crashes over and over and over again, but now I have time and I refuse to give up. 2 hours pass, 32, and yeah, you heard me right, 32 verification codes come my way. 32. And at that point, I'm not gonna lie, I crash out a little bit. I message Vaunt's customer support letting them know that their app is unusable garbage, more torturous than the current US prison system. And I call their support line only to find out that the flight that I've been fighting for nearly 3 hours at this point never even existed. So what's up? Is this all just a big scam where the flights were never real in the first place, and instead this is just a bunch of empty promises designed to funnel me into their booking system? Well, maybe, but I think to get the full picture, we need to talk about Vaunt, the company, and their founder. So to do that, I'm gonna cut back over to reporter Elijah because I still, to this day, think it's a little bit funny. Thanks, Elijah. Vaunt was founded in October 2023 by serial Silicon Valley startup guy Matt Liotta and his company Volato, which was founded 2 years earlier in 2021. Now, I love to go back to the founders when looking into these kind of companies because you can usually get a good indication of where the new startup is headed based on how the startup gurus moved over the course of their resumes, and this dude has moved a lot. Since the late 90s, Liotta has been involved in a ton of companies, The most recent one before Volato was a cannabis cultivation tech company called Agrify, which went public in 2021, watched its stock collapse over the next couple of years, and has since pivoted entirely out of agriculture to sell hemp-derived THC margaritas under a new name. And naturally, Leota pivoted from getting high to being high with his pivot from cannabis to aviation, personally pouring millions into the company's first capital infusion. Volato was marketed as a way to fly private for free, where in theory, owners would earn revenue when other owners flew their planes. If that sounds confusing, it is. Just think of it as similar to a timeshare, but for Honda jets. Little 4-seat jets they could get for an affordable price. And by 2023, things looked good for Volato, at least from the outside. I'm talking 120 fractional owners, 89 jet card customers, and they were the 21st largest charter and fractional operator in the country with a reported 100 million clams in revenue over the previous year, which led to the dream of expansion. And much like Brian Nome's breastplates at midnight, they sure did. They went public, launching on NYSE American, the New York Stock Exchange, with a $190 million valuation with the ticker SOAR, ordered 23 more jets from Honda for $161 million, and launched Vaunt, a low-cost concept that lets subscribers pay yearly for empty leg flights around the country with options for upgrades, seminars, club benefits, and travel planning. That was also the last time the company really ever looked good. In the first quarter of 2024, Volato recognized $0 in fractional ownership revenue. Why, you ask? Well, because Honda was reportedly late in delivering airplanes Volato had already been selling fractional shares to. They reported around a $17 million loss in a quarter and needed to find funding to pay for the jets they already started selling. And by August, things got worse. Volato handed their entire operating fleet over to a competitor called Fly Exclusive. They laid off 233 employees, mostly pilots, and reportedly without the legal required notice to do so, and watched Honda terminate the rest of the $161 million deal while keeping the deposits. That's
rough, buddy.
Which ultimately led to the decision in 2025 for Volato to dismantle itself. They did a 25-for-1 reverse stock split in order to keep their ticker tradable. They sold off their federal license, which legally allowed them to fly paying customers in the first place, and started collecting lawsuits like their Pokemon cards, a bunch of former customers alleging that they paid up to $950,000 each for fractional shares in airplanes that were never delivered. Which is a long way of saying that by the time I signed up in December 2025, Volato wasn't much of an aviation company anymore, just a publicly traded husk of itself trying to do what all great startups do and merge with other companies, which I will get more into later because it's genuinely kind of insane. Now here is the part where I throw in my tinfoil hat. About 6 months ago, our buddy Matt joined Fly Exclusive as their channel business officer. In March of 2026, Fly Exclusive paid $1.3 million for Volato's flight scheduling software, the same software that handles the flight scheduling and operations for the company that runs Vaunt. The same Vaunt app that for 4 months would not let me log in, would not send me a verification code that worked, and was running on what I can only assume to be a single Raspberry Pi being maintained by a guy named Greg, who was also their only remaining salesperson. And then magically, around the same time that Fly Exclusive took over the backend software, my app started working. Verification codes started arriving on time. I could log in on the first try, and many of the flights actually existed. I doubt that there's a direct connection, and I have nowhere to prove that there is, but it is an interesting coincidence. But for now, back to you, Elijah. Okay, enough about the history. After months and months of waitlists and failed verification codes, the morning of April 14th, I open my phone, wipe the thick layer of crust away from my eyes, and I see a notification. Hey, it's Tuesday morning. I'm rushing right now. I just got notified that there was a Vaunt flight. I submitted, made sure that I was first on the wait list. I used my once a year little pass to make sure I could secure my first spot. And now I'm getting ready, packing my bags, and I might have to drive up to Seattle so we can get to Arizona. So I just started driving. No plan, no flight confirmation, no idea where I'm staying, and no idea how or when I would even be coming home. And you know, of everything, I think the lack of confirmation is what was rattling me the most. Just a few days before, I actually had a similar notification, a flight to Utah, and I did secure the #1 spot on that flight. I packed my stuff, rushed out the door, and when I called Vaunt to get an update, they paused for a moment and said they weren't sure about it. They said they'd call me back. They never did, but they sent me a notification that the flight had been canceled by the operator, which sucks. Plus, I had no idea when the flight was leaving. So the best I could do was drive in circles around Seattle in the pouring rain until I figured it out. On top of that, there's parking. I hadn't even considered where I'd be keeping my car or for how long. But at 11 a.m., I finally got the phone call that changed everything.
Congratulations.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but we made it to Seattle and the flights are confirmed, so I'm gonna be flying from Seattle to Phoenix, Arizona at 3 p.m. today.
And I received great news that the parking was completely free, so I didn't have to worry too much about my car ending up on the latest Moist Critical police chase video. I should probably also mention that I had to put a $500 holding deposit in order to get on the flight, in case of damages I caused or any snacks that I eat. Back in my original phone call with Tom, he told me that there were snacks and water and everything else that could be available on a private jet, but if I used any of those things, it would cost me money. So I made sure to drink a ton, and I mean a ton, of water before I ever got to that airport.
I'm in the parking lot of Fred Meyer right now. I'm gonna grab some food because I don't want to have to pay for the expensive stuff on the private jet, but I'm excited to see what it looks like. It's also been pouring rain this whole time, so I hope that doesn't get in the way of anything. I don't think it should.
But just like that, I was driving to the little airport in hopes I'd finally be able to fly on the private jet I've been dreaming about for months. But I still hadn't received a ton of information about what was about to go down. I had an address in Seattle, a time, 3 p.m., a jet number, and that's it. That's really all I had. I had no idea where to park, who to talk to, which of the several buildings I was actually supposed to enter. My private jet experience came with less information than a Regal movie ticket. But after calling the tiny airport I was pulling up to, they let me know that parking was included for as long as I was gone, and that I would actually be able to drive all the way up to the jet. So I pulled into the lot, was waved through the security gate, and waited in a line of cars, presumably also taking a PJ.
Okay, so I just talked to my guy walking over there. He is going to wave me over in just a second. So I'm gonna set the phone here. Hopefully you can see something. Okay, he's waving us over right now. This is crazy. This is actually dude. What the
And you know, the boarding process was pretty quick. I was greeted by the pilots, Sergey and Laura, the only two people on the entire plane. After handing over my ID and getting a brief safety lesson, we were off. And you know what? It honestly felt pretty strange bypassing TSA. I'm so used to being stared down and patted up that this almost felt wrong. Like, boarding really did feel like I was just hopping into an Uber or something. It kind of felt like a missed opportunity for me to smuggle some contraband, like 9 ounces of water or a jar of peanut butter or birds in tiny tubes. And you know, because of the storm, this was one of the bumpiest rides I've ever been on. Laura had to keep me strapped in for a solid chunk of the flight, which might sound restrictive until you remember that, like, I had 3 windows to myself, foot space, a Fiji water, no crying babies. And once we were smooth sailing, it was all good. And finally time for a... Okay, plane tour. Probably pretty hard to hear me because it's extremely loud up here, but I'm gonna do my best to do a little tour of our wonderful plane. So as you can see, to my right, I have 3 windows, 3 entire windows all to myself, which is kind of crazy. Accompanied by some Fiji water. You can't beat Fiji water. Not sponsored. I also have a decent amount of leg room, which is pretty cool. I've never had this much leg room on a plane in my entire life, so that is a wild thing to see. Behind me are a couple of just like safety bags, just in case things go wrong, and an emergency door. You know, just kind of standard stuff, I suppose. But what's really cool is if we walk up to the front where the pilots are, we can see all the snacks on the plane that I'm not gonna buy because they'll charge me like an extra $100. There's not like that much more to see on the plane. The view is great. It's just a great white landscape of clouds. The ride up was maybe the bumpiest ride I've ever had in my entire life, but this plane is like the size of a small bus, so that's not that surprising. I honestly had some mixed feelings at this point. I mean, on one hand, I accomplished the goal of getting onto the private jet. So the company fulfilled its half, even if it was painful to get to this point. But I don't really feel like I felt the luxury that was promised. The little jet was cool, but there was no jacuzzi. There wasn't even a bathroom. It was just me, some really expensive snacks, and 2 pilots who I couldn't even talk to. It almost felt a little bit lonely, but no. I know it's lonely at the top, but I sure like the view. Okay, while I didn't throw my money around and pop bottles on my trip, I was still enjoying the flight on the PJ. After all, being in the aircraft means I didn't get scammed, and that is a pretty good feeling. Though at this point, I did start to think about the fact that I had no return trip. I didn't even know where I'd be sleeping that night or how long I'd be in Arizona. But luckily for me, a few things added up. First, the plane actually had internet, so I was able to look for places to stay downtown. And I found this nice looking vintage hotel not far from the Mortgage Matchup Center. And why do I want to be close to the Mortgage Matchup Center, you ask? Well, because I'm not the only person taking a private jet from Portland to Phoenix. Because the Portland Trailblazers play the Phoenix Suns in Phoenix tonight, which normally would be unremarkable if not for the chances of this specific thing happening. Let me explain. If you've been following the channel for a while, you may have picked up on the fact that I'm a big NBA fan. I was supposed to go to an NBA play-in tournament game on Wednesday the 15th, but it was actually canceled because the Blazers won a qualifying match, meaning they would play in a different city. My tickets got refunded, but the cool part is that the city they played in was Phoenix, Arizona, the night I got the free flight. So I'll still be able to go to the play-in game. I don't know what the odds of me randomly getting a private jet flight to Phoenix on the night of the rescheduled play-in game, but like, I should probably buy some lottery tickets. And as my flight came to an end, I tried collecting my thoughts on the whole experience, and I found myself kind of struggling to do so. Because while I had no one next to me coughing directly on me or toddlers using my seat as a leg press, there was one issue that I just really couldn't get past. I don't know how much longer we have on this flight, but I am holding in a hydro pump of piss right now. There's no bathroom. There's no bathroom here, as you can see. It's just me and the homies on this little flying tube. I am suffering. I am in pain. Despite my bladder trying to escape my body and having to resist the masculine urge of simply pissing in the Fiji water bottle, we made it.
Welcome to Phoenix.
Thank you. Before I get into what the trip was actually like, and trust me, it was crazy, I need to take a second to thank today's sponsor, Manta Sleep, for helping me get through all those restless nights. They sent me their new Manta Silk Mask, and I mean this genuinely when I say I've used this every single night since I've received it. One of my favorite features is that it's 100% silk. If you don't know, I have a skin condition, so having something that's really gentle on my skin makes a huge difference for me. On top of that, it gives you 100% total blackout. My girlfriend sets our lights to turn on automatically when she's getting ready for work, so this helps keep me asleep way longer. So if you want to support the channel and get a super high quality sleep mask in the process, head to the link in the description below and use code Lemard for 10% off your order. Huge thank you to Manta Sleep for sponsoring this video. Now back to the trip. Eventually though, I called for an Uber, and hey, you know what? Shout out to my Uber driver, Jorge, really cool guy. The ride to the hotel was only about 20 minutes, and I was really excited. I mean, I get to watch my team play in a play-in game and stay in a cool vintage hotel after taking a private jet to get here. But little did I know that hotel would become the main villain of this story. But before I get into that, it's time for a very short hotel review.
Okay, finally made it to the hotel, and it is a kind of antique vintage style hotel. There I am. How you doing? Okay, let's check out the bathroom. So, watch your step. There's a little ledge there. Ooh, fancy. Look at the toilet. Nice, nice. Hello. Shower.
I didn't have a ton of time to fully inspect my hotel room because I had to rush to the game. And you know, I had a great time at the game. It was a pleasure talking to all the sad Suns fans. And I did get a little carried away, yapping away into the late hours of the night because I forgot I had something really important to do.
If you don't know, I'm from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and there's a weird food there called pasties. I've never heard of one outside the Upper Peninsula, but downstairs of the hotel, there's a pasty shop. Okay, I just got back from the game. It is around 11 o'clock because I stopped and I got some food. As I said before, I got a pasty just after the game, not before it. Behold the pasty. It is a curry cauliflower pasty with some like tahini, so I don't know how it's gonna taste. Food review time. Food review. Edible.
At this point, I was having a pretty good time. The jet was real, I went to a game I was excited to see, and the food was edible. But lurking behind me on the corner of my bed was an unwanted guest. A little annoyance that would alter the rest of this trip.
Now the observant of you might be wondering, why is Elijah in a different hotel? Well, let me tell you. It's 1 a.m. and I'm finally getting settled. I've been running around looking at things in the city, eating food, talking to people, having a great time. And I returned to my room to do a quick little food review. And shortly after that, I turned my head to the right and I noticed something
Disastrous. Bed bugs. Whole bunch of bed bugs. Here's a picture of one. I named him Jerry after a great friend of mine. Now, obviously, Jerry was an uninvited guest in my bedroom. I didn't want him to be there. So I notified the front office of the hotel, and that opened up a quest line that I was not prepared for. It's about 2 a.m. and I'm waiting for an Uber to get me because there were bed bugs in my room. So I'm making sure there's none on any of my stuff, and I'm trying to relocate. But obviously, it's a bit of a sticky situation. I spent the next several hours looking for new accommodations because as much as I don't mind staying in places that are not, bougie, I also don't really love the idea of bringing bed bugs home. I ended up having to get rides to several different hotels that I contacted that said rooms were available, and by the time I got there, they said they already did the night audit, and I could no longer stay. Oh, why didn't you just go to one downtown that would let you stay there? It was like 1 a.m. I'm sure you could have got one. No, all of them were $400, and I'm not built like that. So I did eventually find a place that was a 35-minute drive outside of where I wanted to be. And it's just like a Best Western, so you make do with what you got. Going from a private jet to a bedbug infested hotel was certainly an exhilarating experience, as it took several hours for me to go through all of my things and do my best at disinfecting all of my clothing and bags and trying to make sure I didn't see any evidence of little Jerry's anywhere. And that took a while, as I didn't want to become super spreader number 1. By the time I finished drying stuff and going through every single thing I had, like Mr. Krabs looking for his last penny, it was 5 a.m. and I was in a Best Western about 40 minutes from anywhere that I actually wanted to be. I also bounced around about 4 hotel rooms at this point, as apparently in Phoenix, everything closes off at about 1 a.m. Private jet in the morning, bed bugs at night. That's my life. And when I woke up, I had one last piece of disappointment waiting for me. Jorge, my Uber driver from day one, the guy I actually vibed with and made plans to hang out with, had completely ghosted me. No text back, nothing. Truly the cruelest plot twist of this entire trip. So I spent the next 2 days walking around Phoenix, trying to get food, trying to talk to people, and trying to pretend I was on a normal vacation. I even walked to cul-de-sac Tempe, the carless neighborhood. I ended up spending about half a day there and talking to some genuinely cool people. So if you want to see my full coverage on cul-de-sac Tempe, you can do so on my Patreon. But eventually I had to figure out how to actually go home. Because if you remember, this was a one-way ticket. And since I had just been laid off, I wasn't super eager to spend $400 to $600 on a plane ticket from Phoenix to Seattle. So I did what any self-respecting budget traveler does after riding on a private jet. I booked a mystery flight home on Priceline for $200. And if you've never done this, the deal is that you don't really know what airline you're using, you don't know the time you're leaving, and you don't know what layovers you have. You just agree to whatever flight nobody else wants. And in exchange, it's cheaper. And I did some sleuthing, I checked the airline times and made an educated guess that the mystery flight would be a one-way around the time that I wanted to leave. And for the first time on this trip, my gamble paid off. In a way, boarding in the last group on a standard economy flight felt better than flying private. I was exhausted at this point and still very concerned about the possibility of bed bugs hiding on me somewhere. But at least I knew how the process was gonna go, and I knew there would actually be a bathroom on board. After landing in Seattle, I did take a $70 Uber to the private airport to receive my car. And I don't live in Seattle, so I had to fuel up and drive back to Portland, which is fine. But gas was $7 a gallon at the time, which was unfortunate. I say all of that to say, by the time I actually got home, I was too exhausted to do anything else besides throw my clothes in the washer again and pass out on my bed. It took me a few days to actually process how wild this whole thing was. It didn't fully hit me until I was looking through my footage of the trip. Driving up to a private jet was wild, and I felt proud that I actually secured the flight that was promised, but that's kind of the problem. I probably shouldn't have to feel accomplished that I actually boarded the flight that I paid $1,400 for. And as I look back on this journey, I can't help but wondering if this was all worth it, and if I got another notification about the flight, would I take it? Would I do this again? And I'm gonna answer all those questions in a minute, but first I have to tell you about something crazy I came across, because my decision to take another flight might not even be up to me. 23 days after my flight, Volato shareholders voted on whether to merge with another company. That company is M2I Global, and the future of Volato as an aviation company is looking shakier than Courage the Cowardly Dog after he sees a ghost. The main reason the future is so uncertain is because M2I Global has absolutely nothing to do with aviation. at least not directly, because it's a critical minerals company. So in other words, the company I just paid $1,400 to fly with is, as of right now, in the process of becoming a contractor that sources lithium and other rare earth metals for the United States Department of Defense. And if you're anything like me and wondering why M2Y would have any interest at all in Volato, it's apparently because Volato built an intelligence platform that enhances the performance of leading large language models, or LLMs, by adding deterministic structure and auditability to complex documents like contracts and SEC filings. But man, let me read you this from their press release. The combined company is expected to leverage M2Y Global's capabilities across mining, refining, and recycling of critical minerals alongside Volato's expertise in software, data systems, and operational execution, creating a scalable, technology-enabled platform focused on strengthening domestic supply chains. Expertise in software? The company that sold jets they never received and own apps that literally don't open are your experts in software and data systems. I mean, I guess you can't drive a company into the ground if they're already focused on mining, but best of luck to you. So with all of that being said, do I think Vaunt is a scam, and would I ever do this again? Well, the product is real and run by a real company, even if the company barely functions. So if you have 4 months to spare, no job, and the patience to enter 33 verification codes in one sitting, then sure, you too can fly private, one way to wherever a repositioning flight happens to be going, as long as the operator doesn't randomly cancel it on you. And I think the crazy thing is, if I just planned to go to Arizona, I could have done it for 1/5 of what I actually spent and had pretty much the exact same experience, minus the extra legroom and lack of TSA. But to be fair, chartering a jet yourself would cost like at least $10,000 or more. And if you somehow were able to get a bunch of friends to come with you with less than 48 hours of notice, assuming they can take work off, then Vaunt probably looks a little bit better. But for me, I really don't see the appeal of taking a private jet in the first place. Like for Vaunt, the jets are fine, but the app is a mess and the customer experience is horrible. I think the appeal of private jets for rich people is the convenience of it, and Vaunt somehow manages to take all of the convenience out of the private jet experience. All I really got out of this was my contribution to the ever-growing CO2 crisis. And bedbugs, but that wasn't Vaunt's fault. So when I'm thinking about if I would do this again or recommend it to other people, I mean, I would take another trip with the money I've already spent. I want to get my value's worth, absolutely. But would I pay for it again, especially knowing that it's now $3,000? Absolutely not. Like I said, I think the only way to really make this worth it is if you have a big group of people who are interested that can pool their money together, and then you can kind of share the cost. Otherwise, I'd say just suck it up and fly like a normal person. It's really not that bad. But hey, if it wasn't for Vaunt, I never would have flown to Arizona to see the Blazers playing a play-in game, so I guess I got something out of it. Anyway, that's the Vaunt video. So if you have your own private jet club or illegal gambling ring or rapidly pivoting defense contractor, or even a business that could sponsor a hair transplant, I'm interested. Hit me up in my DMs. I'm unemployed now anyway. As always, linked in the description are a few different charitable organizations I support that, as far as I can tell, are not fraudulent. Hey, and shout out to the remaining patrons. I'm not giving you a lot, but I appreciate you. See you in the next one.